Australian identity is built on the belief and a willingness to do whatever it takes to win. With a tough draw and a young, plucky squad led by some fired-up veteran leadership, the Socceroos will need to draw on all of that to make an impact in North America in 2026. Welcome to Kickback Soccer Media's World Cup Capsules, where we'll learn everything you need to know about all 48 of the national teams competing at the 2026 World Cup. From the history of the game, the nation's current World Cup trajectory, unsung heroes, and cultural moments. I'm David Goss, and today we are all talking about the Socceroos. If there's one thing that defines Australian football, it's their never-say-die mentality.
What makes us and what has made us stand out from other nations in the past has been our heart and our desire and our mentality. And, it's something we'll never lose, and that's something that's always going to be a part of us.
That's Miloš Degenek, a defender for TSC in Serbia's top flight and Australian national team veteran. While Degenek was born in Croatia, he's represented Australia at the youth and senior national team level, earning over 50 caps.
Australia has given me and my family a lot more than I'll ever be able to pay her back. And I try to pay the country back through football and through what I do on the pitch. I obviously, can't give anyone a second chance at life as Australia gave me and my family. But I try to give people some joy, some fun, while I play football. And that's how I try to give my little 2 cents back.
Soccer isn't the biggest sport in Australia, but it is growing.
The Australian culture is not directed at football, but we are trying to slowly shift it.
But wearing the Socceroo jersey is a huge sense of pride for Degenek.
Every player has the same feeling when they go out and represent their country. It's just a lot of pride. Once you get that national team debut, once you're in and around the squad and, you get some games, it shows that, you've done something right in your football world and your life. And, and I think it's the greatest joy, the most proudest moment that you could have as a footballer, I think.
Soccer got to Australia in the late 1800s through British immigrants. The first football clubs, the Wanderers, were established in 1880 in Sydney, and the Australian Soccer Association was formed in 1921, followed shortly by the national team the year later. After the two world wars, immigration to Australia continued to grow, and it resulted in soccer becoming more popular. Soccer transcended cultural and language barriers in communities, which bridged the gap between minority communities and other classes within the country, thus bringing about a unique unity. The most prominent soccer clubs in Australian cities during the 50s and 60s were based around migrant ethnic groups, all of which expanded rapidly at that time. Croatian, Greek, Macedonian, and Italian communities gave rise to most of the largest clubs. This is something that Degenek experienced firsthand, not in the 50s and 60s, but later on when his family moved to the country.
Where I grew up, obviously in Sydney, a lot of the clubs were ethnic-based. So there was Serbian clubs, Croatian clubs, 2 or 3 Italian clubs, Portuguese club, a mainly Australian club. There was a Scottish club. So it was like multicultural type of thing, but it was very fun.
In 1961, the Australian Soccer Federation was formed and later admitted to FIFA in 1963. In 1966, and after repeatedly being denied access to the Asian Football Confederation, Australia became the founding members of the Oceania Football Federation, now a confederation. The Socceroos qualified for the World Cup in 1974. The team, which was made up of mostly amateur players, was eliminated at the end of the first round, finishing last in their group without scoring a goal. Over a 40-year period, the Australian team was known for its near misses in its attempts to qualify for the World Cup. They lost playoffs in 1966 to North Korea, 1970 to Israel, 1986 to Scotland, 1994 to Argentina, 1998 to Iran, and 2002 to Uruguay. But boy, did that passport get stamped. In 2006, the Football Federation Australia moved from the Oceania division to the Asian Football Confederation. Football Australia hoped that the move would give Australia a fairer chance of qualifying for the FIFA World Cup and allow A-League clubs to compete in the AFC Champions League, thereby improving the standard of Australian football at both international and club levels with improved competition in the region. They won the AFC Asian Cup once in 2015 as hosts and finished runners-up in 2011. By winning this competition, Australia became the only team in the world to have won 2 different Confederations championships. Since moving confederation, the team has also qualified for the World Cup in every attempt, qualifying an additional 5 times for an overall 7 qualifications. In 2010, 14, and 18, they were bounced in the group stage, but in 2022, they made it to the round of 16. There, they fell 2-1 to Argentina, the eventual champions. But we want to jump back to 2006, the golden generation of the Socceroos. Their qualification alone was thrilling in a 2-legged playoff match with Uruguay, who was ranked 18th at the time. Australia, who was ranked 49th, dropped the first leg, but won the second leg, and after 2 periods of extra time, a penalty shootout decided the winner. Australia won the penalty shootout 4-2, making Australia the first ever team to qualify for a World Cup via a penalty shootout. At the World Cup, in their opening game, Australia defeated soon-to-be fellow Asian Confederation squad Japan 3-1, with Tim Cahill scoring 2 goals in the 84th and 89th minute, and John Aloisi scoring 1 in the 92nd. All of them in the last 8 minutes. The goals were the first ever scored by an Australian men's soccer team in a World Cup, and it was also the first victory for an Oceania team in the tournament's history. They lost to Brazil 2-0 and drew Croatia 2-2 to eventually qualify to the round of 16. They were eliminated by eventual champions Italy after losing 1-0. But the country fell in love with that generation of players and that team, which was later named AFC National Team of the Year. And it was a team of legends. And how fitting it was that the team was perfectly comprised of all of these different minority and ethnic backgrounds that had moved to Australia and grown the game. The team that stepped on the field against some of the countries their families were from or they were from, like Croatia and Italy, was led by players like Mark Viduka, Croatian background and captain of the squad. Craig Moore and Harry Kewell, whose families were from England and the UK. Mark Bresciano, who was a legend on that team, destroying opponents up the wing and eventually ended up getting cut from Parma, his team in Italy, because they didn't like the way he played against Italy in that World Cup. This team was the perfect encapsulation of everything that was great about Australian soccer. Tony Popovic was announced as the new head coach after 2 games in the 3rd round of AFC qualifiers, and he led the Socceroos to crucial wins over Japan and Saudi Arabia. Australia finished 2nd in the group and ensured direct qualification to the World Cup for the first time since 2014 and their 6th consecutive World Cup appearance. He's introduced a new level of rigor within the squad, including a strict nutrition routine to help the players be in the best shape. Australia has a number of young talents, like Alessandro, Circati, Nestory, Irankunda, and Jordan Boss, who will be looking to impress during the tournament. This will also likely be the last World Cup for the veterans, like Mathew, Miloš Degenek, and Cameron Burgess. While this is likely the last World Cup for some of Australia's veterans, according to Degenek, there's plenty of young talent to be excited about, especially defender Alessandro Circati and 19-year-old striker Nestory Irankunda. Circati is a 22-year-old central defender for Serie A side Parma, who is the youngest ever captain in Australian history.
He's phenomenal. He's something that we haven't had for a while. He's not going to stick around too long in Parma. He's going to go abroad or go to another bigger club in Italy, which obviously suits him. And he's got the right thing about him that's going to help him, get to an even bigger level and progress and become the star that he should be, I guess.
Irankunda joined Bayern Munich in 2024 before going on loan to Swiss side Grasshoppers and then joining Watford permanently in 2025. Irankunda is regarded by many within the Australian media as one of the greatest talents developed in the country, and Degenek agrees.
Yeah, Ness is very skillful, very powerful, very quick, unpredictable. He's got that little bit of a spark that makes him special. And, he's someone that's got a promising future. Obviously, you don't get signed by Bayern Munich if you don't have that little bit about you. So, yeah, he's very special.
Irankunda is an example of how the game in Australia has remained a dominant experience for immigrants to come into the country. But over time, those immigrants have changed. No longer is it Italian, Scottish, English immigrants consistently. Then, We saw the generational shift into a number of immigrants coming from the Balkans, Serbia, Croatia. Now the team has a lot of players who have come from Sudan, who have come from Guinea, who have come from Liberia, and who have come from Tanzania, like Irankunda. Irankunda was born in Tanzania. His family had fled from Burundi earlier as refugees and eventually settled in Australia. It shows the beauty of the game and how soccer is still an entry point to so many people new to Australia. And of course, as Degenek talked about, the pride and opportunity that these players have to then represent Australia on the world stage. The young talent is very exciting, but when you talk about Aussie legends, you've got to talk about Tim Cahill.
Great chance and the goal. Tim Cahill. It's Tim Cahill again. It's headed back. Cahill. Tim Cahill.
Cahill has scored 50 goals and 108 caps between 2004 and 2018, making him the leading goal scorer for Australia. The next player on the list has only 29. In 1997, Cahill left Sydney for England to play professionally. There, he was signed by Millwall on a free transfer from Sydney United. He was part of the Millwall side that won the Football League second division title in 2001 and was also a central part of Millwall's run to the 2004 FA Cup final. Before the start of the 04-05 season, Cahill was transferred to Premier League club Everton. He was named both Everton Player of the Season and Everton Players Player of the Season in his debut year. And in the following year, he was named as one of the 50 nominees for the Ballon d'Or, becoming the first Everton player in 11 years to be nominated. It was also part of the Everton side that reached the final of the 2009 FA Cup. After leaving Everton in 2012, Cahill played for the New York Red Bulls in MLS and Chinese Super League side Shanghai Shenhua and Hangzhou Greentown, before returning to Australia to play for Melbourne City in the A-League. Cahill was the first Australian to score at a FIFA World Cup. He scored in 3 in the end, 2006, 10, and 14, and has scored the most goals by any Australian in a Men's World Cup with 5. 2007, he became the first Australian player to score at an AFC Asian Cup. Cahill is known for his headers and has scored many of his goals that way. Mostly playing as an attacking midfielder, he's also had some stints as a center forward. He is famous for his regular goal celebration of shadow boxing around the corner flag. Australia was drawn into a tough group with host United States, Paraguay, and a yet-to-be-determined European team.
I had some sort of feeling deep down that we were going to draw either Canada or the US or Mexico. The draws are very evenly spread out. You know, Paraguay's different gravy. Obviously, they've beat Argentina and Brazil during qualifiers. Obviously, everyone's going to want to put their best foot forward. And then from the European nations, we'll see what we get. So I think the group is very balanced and evenly open, where everyone can play with everyone can beat everyone, and I think it's going to come down to who wants it more and who's prepared to die on that pitch for that little bit of glory.
And if you're in the mood to watch these games like a proper Aussie, Degenek has some tips.
The best Australian thing to do is whip out a singlet, a sleeveless top, chuck on a pair of rugby shorts, put on a pair of thongs, sandals, whip out a can of beer, put your feet up, put the couch back, and that's what it is. And make a barbie as well, make a barbecue. That'll probably be the pinnacle.
Well, we always love to leave you with a fun fact. We weren't going to leave that on Milos Degenek. He's got a lot of work to do training and playing as a professional soccer player. We appreciate him joining us on this show. But your fun fact here is that Australia has more camels total than Egypt. Well, that's all for us here on Australia, but we have one of these episodes at Kickback 26 for every single nation. So go listen to the podcast, share them with friends if you think they'd like them. Please rate and review us so other people can find our show. And thank you so much for listening.